Welcome, everyone, to Enlightened Masculinity, the #1 podcast on planet Earth about enlightenment and masculinity and how they go together. I'm one of your hosts, Yogi Chris, PhD, founder of Ninth Limb Yoga, and this show is sponsored by Ninth Limb Yoga, so find us on Instagram, #9thlimb. I'm also a PhD in environmental engineering, and don't let that fool you. I actually know a lot about yoga, too. And that's what I do. I travel the world teaching yoga, and we're kind of talking about that today on this Enlightened Masculinity podcast, the social dynamics of a wanderer. And so I want to quickly introduce my co-host. This is Akash Intikatakam. He's a biotech research analyst for Big Farm up in Montclair, New Jersey, and also a registered yoga teacher starting his yoga following in New Jersey. So very spiritual and smart guy. And if you're in the area up there, then I highly recommend reach out to him. You can find us both on Instagram. And if you're catching us on iTunes, leave us a review. So I'll hand it over to Akash. What's on your mind today, brother?
Yeah, brother, I'm super excited right now. I mean, we just got off finishing up the other podcast where we really explored a little bit more about your background, your roots, and really understood your lineage. As I've come to study more and more teachers, I've recognized the value of really looking deeper into someone's lineage and getting a better understanding of how they've become who they are. So that was really, really cool. And obviously you're someone I am an apprentice under you as well. So to get a better understanding of one's teacher is incredible. What I wanted to talk to you today about is it's no surprise that the way that you earn your living is that you're an international traveling yogi. And that's incredible. You go around, you teach yoga, and you do what you love. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about, I guess, the social aspects to it, right? So someone who's moving around a lot is always consistently in new places and new locations. To some people, they might find this totally ludicrous, being like, what is it like just being able to make new friends everywhere? How do you go about doing that? So I wanted to, I guess, explore with you, what is it that you do as you're traveling around? What is that like in the sense of meeting new people, making new friends, and even keeping in touch with these networks? If you can describe that a little bit. So more succinctly, what is the social practice of a traveling yogi like?
Well, I would definitely say that social practice of somebody is stationary. It's easier. It's for sure. Just from the sheer logistics and the metrics of you are spending less time traveling. And so then you have more time to do other things. But eventually it's going to be to the place where people are traveling with me. Apprentices will travel with me on the road, and they'll be coming to events and venues with me. And more and more as the events and the venues get higher paying, I'm flying more. And so flying allows for more passive time, and I meet a lot of people that way. And it's really cool because people in airports, they have enough money to at least be in an airport, versus at a yoga studio, they might only have $10 to their name, and they're there for the free 30-day trial or whatever. And as a traveler, definitely keeping up in your communications is essential. Going through my texts and remembering who have I met and remessaging them and staying up with them about what's going on in their yoga practice. A lot of people I meet under the pretense of yoga, even if I'm traveling, I mean, that comes up in the conversation. Like, I'm not from here. Oh, where are you from? Why are you here? Blah, blah, blah. Oh, I'm a travel yogi. So everybody has the filter on of this guy, Chris, is the yoga guy. And, health and wellness and whatever. Like I was just talking to a guy. So this happened. A lot of people I meet are just, doing errands, the things that I need to get done. I was just getting my car bumper repaired from a little fender bender. Somebody hit me from behind. And, so just talking it up with that guy. That guy was ripe for this kind of conversation about communication and tonality. And I thrive on that. I thrive on many things, but I thrive on someone being really fascinated by tonality and vocabulary and influence, persuasion and positivity, and really, getting the voluntary cooperation from other people just via your communication. When it turns on in someone else and you see their fascination go up, I get fascinated. I'm like, whoa, like we're the same almost. I get fascinated at this too. You get fascinated at this? And because it's amazing to me that some people don't get fascinated at it. I'm like, what's going on? Like, that'd be like a shark not being fascinated with swimming or something. It's like, you're not fascinated in how to talk better? What's wrong with you? Human? You're not even human. You're just an animal. No, I'm just kidding. And what's so cool about traveling is I go to really a lot of the same kinds of places in different cities. So I love Whole Foods, I love yoga studios, I love parks, and that's basically it. It's like everywhere I go is just like a yoga studio, Whole Foods, or something else like that, and the park. And so I meet people there, and those are my people. They're very easy to meet. I mean, I meet people everywhere I go. I go to the print shop. Sometimes I'll go out to some clubs or some bar or something after yoga. And, so I'm meeting people on the job, basically. Like I'm never off the job. And so it always has that vibe and that frequency to it. And it can get lonely sometimes, and I have my people that I'm in regular communication with, my people around the country and around the world. And, there's a different purpose to what I'm doing right now. I want the global network. I want even the national network. And, as one of my apprentices, I've reached out to 1,400 yoga studios. There are studios now that I call that I haven't even taught for yet. But the person, when they hear me, they almost brighten up. They're like, oh yeah, I remember from 6 months ago. How you doing? How's that going? This and that. And it's only a matter of time. I know how these sorts of things work. I've interacted with enough thousands of people over the last years with my eye on this. I interacted with so many people growing up, but I didn't have my eye on social dynamics or developing relationships. That wasn't a thing I was taught. So now I'm taught it. And so I look at, one term of social dynamics would be buying temperature. I look at what is the enthusiasm level of that person interacting with me. And if it's high enough, I can use that enthusiasm from them to get them to go somewhere else with me. You want to go to the park. You want to go to this yoga studio. You want to go to the food. You want to go back to my place. What are you doing right now? I'll come along with you. And man, maybe the relationships in quantity are less than it would be if I situated somewhere. Like a few months ago, I was situated in Gainesville for a few months. I started building a social network there. A few times I have found myself situated in near where Brian Casella lives in Los Angeles. And I find myself building a social network there. But on the road as a traveler, the relationships I build are very fast, very quickly intense. Also, you get to notice who are the people that I really vibe with, and you stop trying to force it so much with people who don't vibe with you, because you just don't got time for that. I'm on the job. Are you ready? Are you ready to vibe with me? You're not? Okay, next time I come to town. And that ultimatum is a lot of times will kick them over the edge. Like, oh, I just realized that you're actually not going to be available tomorrow or whatever. And so then they come along with what I'm doing. Plus, the lifestyle of what I do is often, it's so exotic to people that they just kind of want to hang around a little bit and see how I am. I'm very normal. But, I travel light. I truly enjoy being in nature, and I do yoga all the time. It is not, I don't have to force myself to do yoga. I think that's one of the most shocking things about new people that hang out with me, is how much I will actually stop what I'm doing just to do my yoga. And just all throughout the day, different breathings. And sometimes I forget to tell people that, hey, I'm disengaging right now. You're not going to catch me because I'm checking out. I'm going inwards for a moment. And then I remember, I should tell them what I'm doing. And so I hope that got us on a direction. What do you think about all of that?
Yeah, that's interesting. One of the things I guess I really picked up from there was the thing that you had mentioned, in the sense of the idea that these relationships are, and to use my own word here, fleeting in some senses, but they're intense very quickly, right? So the question I have for you in this sense is, how does one cut through the bullshit in some senses and really get to an intense, quick relationship in some sense?
You get sick of the bullshit. You get sick of the bullshit. You cut through the bullshit because you just get sick of it. How many failed attempts, how many trying to put on my pleasant face and be a pleaser? That's being the yes man. And, you stop putting up with people's shit. And I still put up with people's shit. I'm sure 2 years from now, I'll look back on today and I'll be like, I was putting up with too much shit. But you get that when you can be honest about what's actually going on. I think another thing what really separates me, because I met many travel people, travel occupations and travel yogis, or kind of that gypsy hippie kind of travel yogi. And they did not handle conflict very well. I had never met a traveler that was that kind of traveler, you know, a young, fit kind of person. These Insta famous people, and they travel, and because they don't cold call like me. I mean, I cold call studios. Like, and by the way, if I ever get really lonely, I'll just call 20 studios, and there's 20 yoga studio owners that I can talk to, and it's like, that's great. That feels great. And but they didn't do that. They were Insta famous on some level, and so people would reach out to them, or they could just send some Instagram messages, and that's beautiful. I mean, that's super cool for them, but they just don't seem to be able to handle conflict. So if they disagree with you on something, they will let it go unsaid, and it will build up static between you two, and then you'll start to feel exhausted later in the interaction because you're withholding that communication and you're getting tense about it, but you're not even honest enough with yourself to acknowledge it. That's what they would be like. I noticed that about them. The thing that I noticed about the non-gypsy kind of travel yogi, and I follow several of them on Instagram because I love their content. They have good yoga content, but they don't have any dynamism to their communication. They're always in teacher mode for their communication. And because they don't have like a social practice. They don't make a practice of meeting people who don't know who they are. And that's really important, I have found. And sorry, what was the question? I got lost.
Yeah, no, I think this led to another question in and of itself was, so what are the differences that you've noticed in people who travel quite a bit and are really engaging with many people often, and those who are kind of static and stay in one area, maybe grow up in one area and stick with it? What are these differences, I guess, that you've noticed from your experience?
Generally, people who travel more are less judgmental. And generally, people who stay in one place are more hospitable and more empathetic. They seem to be better equipped at holding down the family interests, whereas the traveler can just run away from that and escape. But the traveler is more free and lighthearted. It doesn't take things as seriously. And whereas the homebody, or the person that stays in their same town, and it's a general, I'm just talking in generals. So, you know, the person that stays in their hometown, they seem to be getting more caught up in the happenings of the world. But the traveler, because they're both traps, the traveler seems to be getting caught up a lot more in their headspace, and which are both material attachments, because your mind is material. So yeah, what any other differences I've noticed? I think the traveler has a more difficult time empathizing, and I think that the person that has a how do I call it? The person that's stationary, they have more difficulty letting go of the problem, like whatever their living situation problem is, or their problem of whatever life is handing them in that moment. They seem to have a more difficult time emotionally handling that. Go ahead.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about, I guess, the importance of those who are stationary to have a social practice where they're meeting new people that they don't know, and
everybody really,
particularly if they're a teacher. Yeah, everybody, I suppose. Yeah. What is it like to talk to someone that you don't know? In other words, how is your communication different if you talk to someone that you're meeting fresh versus someone that you know already?
No expectations, or your expectations will bite you in the ass. You come to somebody, if you know them, then you have an expectation that they'll treat you something similar to how they treated you last time. Which is kind of the psychosis of having a girlfriend or girlfriends, is because they change so much that it's hard to expect a certain kind of communication from them. I've learned to rely a little bit on Angelica, and we have handled much communication, so there's a reliability there. But people who don't know who you are, they will not tolerate shit. They won't, if they don't like your communication, they have no vested interest in tolerating it for any amount of time. So in the beginning of a social practice, you become a pleaser because it doesn't feel good for people to reject you. And if you keep approaching new people, more people will reject your communication than not, generally. Even if it's 6 out of 10, that's a majority who are rejecting it. And that doesn't really feel that good. I mean, when you find the 4 people who accept it, then it feels really good. But sometimes you got to go through, what if you got to go through 6 in a row that don't accept it, and then, but to meet that one. So then people become pleasers, and which feels very dishonest and draining. They'll start to drain their own energy because they're changing who they are, not for the sense of influencing that person, but for the sense of being accepted by that person, which is not the same thing. And if you can stick with it long enough, then, like we said, maybe in the last podcast or maybe it was earlier in this one, you just stop tolerating their bullshit and their bullshit responses. But of course, then you can come across abrasive. So the next level of that is you don't tolerate their bullshit, but you point out their bullshit in an agreeable way, some way that they will agree to. And that just takes practice and meeting lots of people. So it's essential to meet people who don't know who you are because they're very much more unpredictable. And that's what makes you more dynamic. If you keep talking to the people who know who you are, then you'll quickly organize into a pecking order, a hierarchy of status, and you will talk to each other from your position. And if you, like me, are in the process of personal development and you're, especially as an adult, you're probably accelerating really fast in that. And so you're really leaving other people behind in whatever that evolution is of your communication and your self-esteem and self-image and all of that. And if you only communicate to the people who know who you are, their communication with you back and forth with what I know about communication now, join the silent flute if you really want the magic of it. But it creates that reality. Your agreement of the ideas that you're exchanging back and forth is what becomes your social status with each other. And if you are a group of 10 people and one person is trying to improve themselves, your communication is outnumbered by the other 9. And if they keep communicating to you from the position where you were, it's heavy. It will drag you back in your evolution to where you were, your situation there. Communicate with new people, though, and you continuously make first impressions. And those first impressions set the frame in the other person's mind of who you are. So if you have a group of 10 and one person's improving themselves, but then that person goes out and meets 90 people, now all of a sudden the new frame has more people. It outnumbers the old. And so you can adopt that new frame, and then you go meet new people and new people. As you evolve, you meet new people, and those new people accept you at your level. That's part of the problem of like you go and grow and expand and become a much better person. You go back to your parents, and then you fall back into those old like argument habits because they're still communicating to you as if when you left, that nothing's changed for them. They haven't seen your journey. And so that's super powerful. And there was something really cool in there I was going to throw in. Let's see, what was it? Continuously meeting new people and first impressions. And it becomes such a practice for self-improvement, personal development. I mean, social dynamics is one of the best, if not the best. I mean, it's up there because to continuously make first impressions with people who will not tolerate your shit, that's what a new person would be. Man, you got to come to terms with your facial expressions, with your tonality, and that first face and that first sound that comes out of you is very indicative of your mindset and your self-esteem. And like I said, if you ignore that, if you just fake it and are always acting, that will drain you. You will become tired of always fronting and faking. So you got to really face that your initial tone and your initial face, you got to come to terms with that your initial facial expression, your initial voice tone is how you feel about yourself. And meeting new people will reveal it to you if you can bring a little bit of meditative awareness to it. And all it takes, I mean, then it just takes a persistence and a coach to help you change your delivery. And you will change. You'll change as a spiritual being. You'll change when you change your voice and your face. And that's why I love meeting new people as a practice.
Brother, just as we close up this episode, the last question I want to ask you is, how do you, as you go along your journey of self-development or self-improvement, and you recognize that you're consciously changing your communication patterns through meeting new people, along your journeys. When you come back and return back to your family or friends of long periods of time, how do you communicate to these people that you've changed?
Well, it should be obvious in your communication. Communication has infinite colors of tonality and so many combinations of words. And then when you add in your hand gestures, your eyes and your face, I mean, it's infinite, really. And, how I'll answer this, and let me know if this is the answer, because it feels like this should be the answer, that it's in the moments of resistance, how you respond to their resistance. When they communicate in a way that it feels like it stirs something up in you, like you can feel an auto response is coming, like you're about to respond how you had responded when you were a boy or an adolescent or whatever, a girl, if women watching, when you were younger, when you were their dependent, when you feel that response almost want to come out, and you respond differently. Or when you respond differently and later, either immediately later or later, you realize that I responded differently than I used to. And I got a different response from them as a consequence. I literally changed the outcome of the universe. I changed the outcome of my relationship because I changed my response to that situation. In the past, I was on a looping response to that kind of stimuli. She says it that way, he says it that way, and all of a sudden I respond this way. And 100 times, 1,000 times, that's what it was when I was growing up. And then this happens. I love revisiting family and old friends, because responding in a new and different way will reveal to myself and to them, even if it's unconscious to them, how I've changed. That's what I'd say.
Thank you so much, brother. This was excellent and really interesting, particularly I think the last piece of as we change over time, how do we signal this to those who have seen us in our earlier renditions or earlier versions of ourselves?
Here. I'll say it in this way. You signal it by changing how you respond to their challenges.
That's rich right there. That's very, very rich. To those of you guys who are catching this episode in the podcast itself, check out the Enlightened Masculinity Facebook group. The link is in the show notes itself. And additionally, subscribe, like, and give us a rating on iTunes. This helps us spread our message and really allow others to hear more about what is it like to be a modern, mystical, masculine man. So with that, Yogi Chris, I turn it back over to you for any closing thoughts and final statements.
Well, this was really rich. I'm flattered that you were asking me these questions these last 2 episodes, and that's been it's fun for me. I've made some new connections for myself, and if anybody here listening is interested in this kind of training, then go to our Enlightened Masculinity Facebook group, and it's a private group where we give some free advice there. Big community. I don't know. I think we have like 70, 80, 90 people in the group right now, and which is really rich, because where else do you go for this kind of information? If we have some familiar faces here. I know you all have some of the same teachers as us, but anybody catching us on iTunes, where do you go for enlightened masculinity information? Where do you go for that information to become if you're not manning up in the way that you think you should be? Something is unsatisfied. That's why you're here. You're like, oh, this advice, I wonder what this is like. There's something that you're like, I know I could do better. And you're maybe a little concerned about, well, where do I turn for this? Because so many people in the sheepish society that we have today would shame you for trying to become more masculine, or shame you for not knowing how to do it just off the bat. Like, why don't you know? They would somehow challenge your pursuit of this kind of information, and so you keep it on the DL, on the down low. Where is your go-to source for this kind of information? And if Enlightened Masculinity Podcast is, if you value this source, then, you know, join our Facebook group, leave us a review, and show us some love. You know what I'm saying? So, and share it with a friend. So I love you all for being here. Thanks, Akash, for being my co-host. Thanks, Sal. I love it. And yeah, that's it for today. We'll catch us every Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific on Enlightened Masculinity. Namaste.